Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're buckling up for something that promises to be ultra long, incisive, and honestly pretty fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. It's a heavy hitter today.
Yeah, and before we even get into the trenches here, I want to give a quick reminder. If you want the signal without the noise, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button right now. We are doing the heavy lifting so you don't have to.
Right. You definitely don't want to miss our future deep dives.
Exactly. So, today we are digging into a manual, and it's being sold as nothing less than armor for the modern man. We are talking about survival in a landscape that, many of you listening might feel has turned hostile.
We're looking at a book called Women Are Big Children. Arthur Schopenhauer explained women's irresponsibility and deceit.
Quite the title.
It is. It's by Conrad Riker. And I have to say, right out of the gate, this isn't just a philosophy book. It reads like a field manual for psychological warfare.
It really does. And Riker is targeting a very specific guy here, right? He is speaking directly to the red-pilled men's rights activist, or really anyone who is trying to understand the history of our institutions before they were. And this is his phrasing captured by feminists and Marxists.
Exactly. The core value proposition of this book is essentially defensive. The author is saying to you, look, if you feel drained by endless demands, or if you feel like you've been lied to about female maturity, this book is your reality check.
And we're going to break all of this down in detail, but just a quick disclaimer up front. We are impartial here. We are not taking sides or endorsing the political or social views in this book. Our mission for this deep dive is simply to unpack the arguments Riker is making so you can understand the source material.
Right, we're just the messengers. But Riker himself insists that you need the full text to really get the codes he's putting down. So he wants you to check Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books to buy this ebook immediately.
And you can also follow him for updates at Conrad Riker at Substack. That's at CONRAD and RIKER at Substack.
So let's unpack the premise.
Yeah, it's a bold title. Women are big children. It sounds inflammatory, almost like a playground insult. But the author is actually drawing on the 19th century philosophy of Arthur Schopenhauer.
And he's combining it with what he calls modern data.
Right. The book's central thesis is that biology dictates behavior. Riker argues that ignoring biological reality leads to personal ruin and eventually civilizational collapse.
He's taking Schopenhauer's view that women remain in a state of permanent adolescence, and he's trying to back that up with modern neuroscience and economic statistics.
Let's dive into that permanent adolescence idea, or what the book calls the eternal toddler. Because usually, when we talk about maturity, we think about it socially.
Socially or culturally, yeah.
But Riker is talking about hardware here. He cites some very specific studies regarding the brain.
He does. He references a specific claim regarding a Harvard Medical School study. The book states that this longitudinal neuroimaging study found that female prefrontal cortex development plateaus at age 15.
Wait, hold on. Age 15. Because the prefrontal cortex is the CEO of the brain, right?
Right. It's the part that handles logic, long-term planning, impulse control. It's basically the brakes on the car.
Okay.
And the claim in the text is that for women, that structural development hits a ceiling in mid-adolescence. Contrast that with men, whose brains reportedly continue developing that structural maturity until age 25.
So a 10-year biological gap.
According to the book, yes. Riker argues this biological gap explains everything from impulsivity to emotional volatility. He says it's not that they won't plan for the future, it's that the hardware is optimized for the immediate now.
And he connects this directly to spending habits, which is where the economic data comes in.
Yeah.
The stats he throws out are pretty wild. He claims women control 85% of consumer spending, but file for bankruptcy at twice the rate of men.
It's the disparity between power and responsibility. If you control the money but lack the brakes, you get a crash. And he illustrates this with some anecdotes that are clearly designed to make the reader cringe, like the story of Jessica, the corporate lawyer.
Oh, I remember reading that part, because this is someone you'd expect to be highly functioning, right? High salary, big degree.
On paper, absolutely. But Riker describes a scene where she had a public meltdown because Starbucks used 2% milk instead of oat milk. And we aren't talking about a polite complaint to the barista. He says she smashed an $800 phone over it.
Over milk.
Over milk. Riker uses that to argue that despite the professional title, the emotional regulation is akin to a toddler. The lawyer's just a costume. The biology is still operating at that age 15 plateau.
Wow. And then he mentions a Beverly Hills boutique owner, too.
Yeah, a woman who liquidated her inventory just to buy Beanie Babies.
Beanie Babies? That feels like a blast from the past.
It does. But the principle he's getting at stands. The key detail Riker points out is that this happened during her ovulation week. He brings up neuroscience claims about dopamine spikes during shopping and how hormones like estrogen affect decision-making.
So he's arguing these aren't rational choices.
Right, he says they are biological imperatives to gather resources, triggered entirely by hormonal cycles.
He even cites a University of Texas study regarding strategic crying. He argues that tears are an evolutionary tool for resource extraction. I think, every guy listening has probably experienced that. The argument is going one way, the logic is sound, and then the tears start.
And suddenly you're apologizing.
Exactly.
Riker calls that a biological hack. It bypasses the male logic center and triggers the protection instinct. It's a weapon. And that leads us perfectly into the concept of the mommy trap and weaponized incompetence.
This is the idea that women feign an inability to do things just to control men, right? The example that really stuck with me was the London banker. That story was genuinely disturbing.
It was a very long game. The text describes a banker whose wife systematically mismatched his socks for 3 years.
3 years of mismatched socks. I mean, it sounds petty on the surface, but there was a dark strategy there.
It was legal preparation. She used his supposedly chaotic dressing habits in court to argue he was mentally unstable and unfit for custody.
That's insane.
Riker uses this to show how domestic sabotage is calculated. It's not that they can't match socks, it's that they are maneuvering for power within the relationship.
Which segues right into the next major segment of the book, which is the economic and legal plunder. The book describes marriage not as a partnership at all, but as a state-sponsored looting spree.
It's a very cynical, very economic view of relationships. But we have to look at the data he uses to back this up. He cites CDC and census data claiming 80% of divorces are initiated by women.
80%.
Right. Yet men pay 97% of alimony.
He calls it the divorce industrial complex. Basically, his argument is if you incentivize breaking the contract, people are going to break the contract.
Precisely. And he talks about the concept of divorce rape and the simp drought. It's all about asset stripping. The book gives an example of a man whose ex-wife's girlfriend moved into the house he was still paying for.
Oh, man.
And the court ruled he had to support the new household because it was in the, quote, best interest of the domestic stability.
So he is paying for his ex-wife and her new partner to live in his house. That is literally a nightmare scenario for any guy.
It's the cuckoldry of the wallet,
Yeah.
as Riker puts it. And this connects directly to the idea of hypergamy. We hear that term a lot in these spaces, but how does Riker define it in the book?
He defines it as a dual mating strategy.
Correct.
The argument is that women secure a beta provider for resources, so safety, shelter, food, while secretly or even overtly seeking alpha genes for high-quality offspring.
The dual strategy. And he backs this up with that famous Tinder experiment data.
Right, the claim that the top 10% of men get 90% of the female attention, while women rate 80% of men as below average in attractiveness.
Riker argues this creates a massive market imbalance. Average men are essentially invisible sexually until they are needed financially. You don't exist as a mate, you only exist as a wallet.
But it's not just about the money, it's about the legal system itself. We have to talk about false accusations. The book takes a very hard stance against the believe all women narrative.
It definitely does. Riker cites UK Home Office data claiming false allegations are around 8 to 10%, which he argues is a massive number of ruined lives. He brings up the Brian Banks case.
The NFL prospect.
Yes, the NFL prospect who was exonerated after 5 years in prison. His life was destroyed before his career even began.
And the mattress girl case at Columbia University. Emma Silkovich.
Yes, that's in there too. The book frames these not as anomalies, but as evidence of a system that accepts feeling scary as legal grounds to bypass due process entirely.
Feeling scary.
Right. He calls these legal lullabies. Stories courts tell themselves to justify stripping men of assets and children without requiring actual hard evidence.
So, if the legal system and the biological reality are so stacked against men, how did we get here? Because presumably, civilization didn't always operate this way. This is where the book pivots to history. Segment 3 is all about institutional capture, specifically by Marxism and feminism.
Riker does not mince words here. He connects the modern gender war directly to cultural Marxism. He argues that the entire framework of modern feminism isn't about equality at all, it's about destabilization.
And he goes after the big icons too, Simone de Beauvoir.
He claims her book, The Second Sex, was essentially Soviet-funded propaganda. The goal, according to Riker, was to destroy the nuclear family, because the family is the primary rival to the state. If you break the family unit, the individual has no choice but to rely on the government.
And he alleges Gloria Steinem had CIA and funding connections that compromised the entire movement right from the start.
The overarching argument is that equity and diversity are tools designed to dismantle Western civilization by removing meritocracy. If you start hiring based on identity rather than competence, the system eventually fails.
Which leads right into his critique of the modern workplace. He calls them corporate kindergartens. I actually laughed at that term, but his point is deadly serious. He talks about HR departments turning offices into adult daycares.
It's the feminization of the workspace. He points to the Bud Light controversy, the $27 billion loss, and Disney's stock drops.
Right.
He uses those as proof that the market is actually rejecting this ideology. The book argues that woke ideology is fundamentally bad for business because it ignores reality. When you prioritize feelings over profit or competence, you lose money.
And regarding the workplace, he tackles the wage gap, and he basically thinks it's a complete myth.
He calls it a myth debunked by career choice data. He uses the comparison of sewage treatment workers versus HR managers.
Right, the dirty jobs.
Exactly. His point is, men do the dangerous, dirty jobs that keep civilization running. And that is why they earn more overall. It's not discrimination, it's hazard pay.
It's not just corporations either, it's schools. He calls them indoctrination factories.
He mentions grievance studies factories. There's a specific anecdote about ethnomathematics in Portland where he claims algebra is being delayed or restructured to fight white supremacy.
That's wild.
And he contrasts that with China's intense focus on STEM. Riker's argument is geopolitical here. We are teaching our children to be victims, while our global rivals are teaching their children to be engineers.
Okay, let's go even deeper. We talked about money, laws, and politics. But the book gets very personal with reproductive warfare, and honestly, this is the stuff that probably keeps guys up at night.
This is probably the most disturbing part of the book for many readers. He talks extensively about paternity fraud.
He calls for the Schopenhauer solution, which is his term for mandatory DNA testing at birth.
Because according to the sources he cites, he used a Dr. David Buss in the Journals of Epidemiology, up to 30% of high-confidence fathers are actually raising another man's child.
Wait, 30%?
That we claim. And high confidence means men who have absolutely no reason to doubt their wives.
That is a terrifying statistic for a father to hear. You're working, you're sacrificing your life, and the genetic legacy isn't even yours.
It creates a profound sense of insecurity. He tells the story of a Detroit auto worker who supported twins for years, worked overtime, ruined his health, only to find out neither child was his. The book describes birth control sabotage as a literal military tactic used to entrap men into these situations.
And it's not just reproductive deception, it's physical deception too. What he calls the beauty deception.
Riker analyzes cosmetics as biological booby traps. He argues that makeup and cosmetic surgery are camouflage designed to trick men into evaluating a woman's genetic fitness incorrectly. You think you're getting healthy genes, but you're actually getting a mask.
There was that really dark story about the Beverly Hills socialite.
The one who died from a Brazilian butt lift. BBL Riker uses that to show the extreme, even fatal lengths women will go to compete in the sexual marketplace. And he brings it to the modern day with the filter epidemic. How digital filters create a vanity gap in false advertising in dating apps. You meet them in person, and they look nothing like the profile. Riker explicitly calls that fraud.
So let's just recap the battlefield here for a second. We have biological immaturity in the eternal toddler. We have legal plunder in the divorce courts. We have institutional capture by Marxist ideology. And we have reproductive and physical fraud.
It paints a very bleak picture.
It really does. It feels like the walls are completely closing in. But the book promises armor.
So, what is the solution? What does the red pill actually offer here?
Riker called his solution the Phoenix Protocol. And it starts with the mind. You have to fortify your psychology before you can do anything else.
Which means stoicism?
Yes. He points directly to Marcus Aurelius. The advice is to become unbreakable by practicing stoicism and refusing to negotiate with what he calls emotional terrorists.
Emotional terrorists.
It's all about detachment. If she cries, you don't react. If she screams, you don't react. If you don't react, you cannot be controlled. But you need more than a strong mind, right? You need a protected wallet.
This is the financial defense wing of the protocol. He outlines the Robert Mercer approach.
And what's that exactly?
It's about aggressive, almost paranoid asset protection. Offshore trusts, cryptocurrency, making your assets legally invisible to divorce courts. The idea is, if the state can't find your wealth, they can't redistribute it to your ex.
It sounds like preparing for an actual war.
In Riker's view, it is a war. He discusses MGTOW, men going their own way. The book presents this as economic secession from the gynocracy.
Starving the beast.
Exactly. If the game is rigged, the only winning move is not to play. Stop dating, stop marrying, stop cohabitating.
And what about physically? Because he talks about that too.
The Spartan a gauche. He advocates for lifting weights, learning hard trades, and completely rejecting soy-laden empathy. It's about reclaiming dominion over your own body and your skills so you aren't dependent on the system. If you can fix your own pipes, build your own house, and defend yourself physically, you are infinitely less vulnerable.
So, to summarize this deep dive, Women Are Big Children is essentially a manual. It claims to explain the biological reality of women as permanent adolescents. It exposes the alleged corruption of our institutions by feminist ideology, and it maps out a strict path for men to reclaim their power.
It is a call to build a fortress. It challenges the listener to really look at the risks of participating in what Riker calls a rigged system. It asks a simple question. Are you a player in the game, or are you just the resource being harvested?
Which leads us to a final provocative thought for you listening right now. If the system is designed to harvest your labor and your capital, what happens to the machinery of the state when the crop decides to uproot itself? Are you funding your own destruction by participating in a system that hates you? Or are you ready to build your own fortress?
It certainly makes you question the entire status quo.
Absolutely it does. Listen, if you want the full arsenal, you need to go directly to the source. We strongly urge you to buy Women Are Big Children by Conrad Riker. It's available right now on Amazon Kindle and Google Playbooks. Don't just take our word for it. Get the manual yourself.
And for updates directly from the author, make sure to follow @Conrad Riker at Substack.
Do not forget to like, subscribe, and share this deep dive with other men who are awake to what is going on. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.